Our reactions have continued to trail the verdict placed on one of Britain's royal Prince Andrew. This comes after he was stripped of his prince title and is to leave his Windsor mansion, Royal Lodge. The king's brother, now known as Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, will move to the royal estate in Sandringham, Norfolk. Britain's King Charles took the extraordinary step of starting the process to strip his brother Andrew of his royal titles and evict him from the royal estate following the scandal over the disgraced prince's links to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The move, described in stark terms by Buckingham Palace as necessary censures, cements the deepest split in the British royal family in decades.
I think that probably most people would be happy about it, not particularly surprised, probably a good thing.
I think that they're doing what they think is right. I don't really have an opinion though, either way. I think they're going to do what they want to do.
I just read it on the plane this morning, yeah.
Yeah, what were your thoughts on that?
Well, he's probably done the wrong thing, so probably deserve it, I think. Well, it should have happened a long time ago, really. But, I mean, the monarchy over there were looking after each other, looking after their brand. So at least they've done something now.
I'm not a royalist.
You're not a royalist?
No, so quite frankly, I don't care.
And recall that Mr. Andrew had faced 15 years of on and off controversy over his friendship with Epstein that had reached a new intensity after the release of a posthumous memoir by Virginia Giuffre, who alleged that Andrew had sexually assaulted her as a teenager. The United States President Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping have agreed to call off a mutual escalation in their country's trade war, lowering the temperature in a heated confrontation that has threatened to upend the global economy. President Trump and President Xi sealed a one-year trade truce on Thursday on the sidelines of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit in South Korea, where the two leaders met face-to-face for the first time since 2019. But while the agreement offered a reprieve to businesses unsettled by months of back and forth trade salvos, it did lead to roll back existing trade barriers and left numerous points of contention between the sides unresolved. Chinese President Xi has, however, called for steady sailing forward of giant ship of China-US relations, as he adds that the business relationship between the countries should serve as the anchor and driving force and not a stumbling block or point of friction. And much later, we will speak to an expert who will be talking to us about how significant this really is for the United States and, of course, China. In the meantime, let's turn our attention to Tanzania, where gunfire echoed across the street of the city's largest capital as police clashed with protesters following a controversial presidential election. Now, this comes as demonstrators in Dar es Salaam defied a curfew on Thursday, setting fires and chanting in anger across the Mbagala, Gongola, Mboto and Kiluvia neighborhoods. Police responded with tear gas and live rounds as Amnesty International says at least 2 people, including a police officer, have been killed. The organization's regional director, Tigere Chaguta, called these killings deeply disturbing and urged authorities to launch an independent investigation into what he described as the unlawful use of lethal force. The unrest erupted after Wednesday's election, in which the President Samir Suluhu Hassan's 2 major challenges were disqualified from running. Rights groups say the move deepened a broader crackdown of dissent, journalists and opposition figures, including the arrest of Chadema party leader Tundu Lissu on treason charges early this year. The United Nations and Human Rights Watch have also warned for months of escalating repression in Tanzania. Amid growing unrest and an internet blockout, protesters say they will not be silenced. And joining me to have this discussion on latest development in Tanzania, I'm joined by Victor Hai, an African Affairs analyst Mr. Ohai will help us understand the political dynamics behind this unrest, the implication for democracy in Tanzania, and the broader regional impact of election-related violence. Mr. Ohai, thank you for joining us at this time.
Thank you for having me.
Now, Tanzania is not the latest country where election results has really led to political crisis. That's after Cameroon and countries like Ivory Coast. What do you make of this widespread nature of this content?
Well, it's really sad, very unfortunate indeed that in this day and age, when we should be celebrating democracy on the African continent, after many years of military rule, this is what we're getting. I mean, when you think about Tanzania, you remember Julius Nyerere and all that he fought for and what he represented in Tanzania and for Africa as a whole. This is really sad. And why I say this is sad is the fact that the current or the incumbent president was somebody or is somebody who Providence, thrust upon the mantle of leadership. She was a vice president, and then the late Magafulu unfortunately passed on, and then she assumed the mantle. This is her first election, and to have started this way is really sad because, I mean, what's the point in disqualifying and, putting allegations on the neck of people, that would, silence them? And this will obviously have, this will obviously have defenders, supporters. I feel that, and that's what democracy really should be about. The will of the people. Let everybody go out there, everyone who is qualified, go out there, contest, and let the popularity determine how you ascend office. But that's not the case. What we have found in Cameroon, what we have found in Cote d'Ivoire, and the latest now in Tanzania is that the incumbents want to remain in power by hook or crook, by whatever means necessary. Every strong opposition is silenced, and obviously you cannot silence the voice of the people, and that's what has translated into the dissent that we're seeing right now, where peaceful change, as it is said, is not possible, then violent change becomes inevitable. That is what is playing out now, and it's really sad that Tanzania, that has been a bastion of democracy, a symbol of democracy on the continent, should be brought to this level because of the, if you like, selfish or the people of Cameroon. The same thing would not be happening in Cote d'Ivoire. And I feel that, unless, the incumbent president in Tanzania, if she was not sure of backing by some powers from outside, she would not have the boldness to be doing what she's doing, which is really, really sad. So what is left at the end of the day is for the people from within to decide whether they want to live with this or not.
We're going to go on a break very soon, but I want to ask you what implication this really holds, for trajectory of democratic development and progress on our continent, Africa. Like you cited earlier, you mentioned some other countries and how this really affects democracy. What would you say this, will impact on democracy in the region?
Well, I think that it will impact negatively for two reasons. One, if leaders like Biya and the leaders like President of Cameroon, Cote d'Ivoire, and now Tanzania get away with this impunity of, silencing opposition and imposing themselves, then it could then become a trend. And if care is not taken, you might just find the people deciding, to seize power by force, like what happened in Madagascar.
All right, I'll hold you for a moment so that we can continue this conversation after the break. We have been speaking with expert analysis, Victor Ohai, an African affairs analyst. You're still watching The World Now on TVC News. We'll be back with more stories after this break. Stay with us. Thank you for staying with us on World Now. We're still staying in Tanzania, where there's been a clash between the police and protesters following the presidential election in that country. We're still speaking with African affairs analyst Victor Ohai, who is helping us to understand the political dynamics and how it led to this point in that country. Mr. Ohai, thank you for staying with us at this time. How would you say the tensions leading up to this election set the stage of the violence that we are seeing at the moment?
Okay, clearly, when a candidate campaigns, he has supporters. And you know that in Africa, we're also tribal. And so if in the run-up to the election, you have people who have been campaigning all this while spending money and their supporters have been backing them, and then suddenly you swing a big hammer because you are in government and then accuse them of put treasonable charges, hang treasonable charges on them, and for one reason or the other, disqualify them, then it's not just that individual that you're disqualifying. What you're doing is disenfranchising all the voters, all their supporters. And, you know, it wasn't just one case, about 2 or 3 people were affected. And what you find is a situation where there's total disenchantment because disqualifying the candidates will not translate to their voters voting for another party. And that is what has happened. And if it is a situation like, as in this case, where these opposition candidates have very strong supporters, and if care is not taken, maybe even in the majority, then the majority cannot be silenced. And that is what we're experiencing right now. I would usually say, although you have not asked the question, that the antidote to things like this is good rulership. If you rule well, you have nothing to be afraid of. You don't need to ban anyone in order to win an election. But it just seems like the shortest way or the quickest way to win an election right now. If you see anyone strong, wield the big hammer and then, stop them from contesting. But that shouldn't be the case. And that is a result of what we're seeing now, all the violence that we are experiencing today.
I mean, some have said that, this protest, people coming out to protest at this time is also a way of expressing their frustration at the long-standing grievances. How would you interpret this? How does this crisis really reflect, the people's long-standing political grievances and perhaps opposition claims of, democracy backsliding in countries like Tanzania?
Okay, so I want to speak even generally and broadly. If you look at Cote d'Ivoire, for instance, the same thing happened. Yes, the government may have been bragging about economic indices looking good, but it didn't translate to the ordinary person on the street. It didn't translate to youth employment. And so the people, like Fayose would usually talk about stomach infrastructure. You feel it first in your stomach, no matter what the statistics say, and that is what determines how you react. And that is what has happened in this case, because, if I'll repeat it, the antidote to things like this is good rulership. I never saw anyone who had sugar in their mouth who would spit it out, unless, of course, there are reasons like diabetes and the rest, but if something is sweet, you don't throw it out. You want to maintain it. That's not the case. I think that's not the experience with Tanzanians. What you see here is dictatorship. What you see here is imposition. What you see here is power by whatever means necessary. And it is sad that, we would argue, we talk about affirmative action, talk about giving women a chance, talk about giving young people a chance. But you find a situation, for me, my conclusion usually is that leadership is an individual thing. It has nothing to do with gender. It has nothing to do with age. It's just simply the individual. And that is what we're seeing play out here. This is not a good representation of a woman in power. And that does not mean that that's how women are generally. It just happens to be one woman who is power drunk and is interested in retaining power by whatever means necessary.
Mr. Aha, one would think that, with the lot of advocacies and all of that in terms of youth involvement in politics, there will be more change in Africa. From recent development, even despite argument that some, leaders, presidents still in power at this time are too old to hold offices, we still see some of them still being re-elected into offices despite. What exactly should be done to ensure that the youth have access to power, even at a young age?
The problem we have generally is that these gerontocrats are not interested in going anywhere. They are fully entrenched everywhere. The other day I saw, it was yesterday or last night or so, I saw the picture. I don't know if it's true, but if that is the case, it's really sad, of a 94-year-old Senate president swearing that will be swearing in a 92-year-old leader in Cameroon. I spoke when I was analyzing the Cameroon elections. I said, The problem is not even those gerontocrats. The problem is the people entrenched in the corridors of power who want to continue to perpetuate themselves, who want to keep themselves there by all means necessary. And the symbol of power for them is that person in power, whether the person is senile, is as old as anything, or is incompetent. They don't care. In the case of Cameroon, although that's not the state what we're talking about now, the president is out of the country more than 80% of the time. He's not even a resident in Cameroon, and yet, so what it simply means is that it's just a symbol for those who want to perpetuate themselves in power. And they will do anything necessary, because a change in government or in administration means no job for all those people. So what should be done for the youth? I think that young people should not continue to sit down and wait and hope that power is going to be served a la carte. No way. They would have to get into the system in their numbers. And the truth is that the youth population is so much more. And unless they decide, not necessarily through protests, but they must agree that enough is enough, no more old people in power, and then decide by themselves, that they would go in their numbers, vote for the right people in their numbers, defend their votes by whatever means necessary, so that there can be a change.
I mean, the concern also is if this youth, when given the opportunity, will also uphold their integrity when they get into office, and not, later turn out to be one of the bad eggs that they condemned, as you've seen with, past trends in some countries in Africa. Mr. Hart, this is a fine place to leave the conversation for now. We're hoping that...
you heard what I said earlier about youth and whether women and all that is an individual thing.
We're hoping that this protest will not, prolong or be difficult to handle by the government and all of that. So. That's a fine place to leave the conversation. Thank you for talking to us at this time.
Thank you for having me.
And finally on World Now, Cuba's military has rescued 38 residents trapped by severe flooding after the Sagua River overflowed on Wednesday following heavy rain from Hurricane Melissa. Using an amphibious vehicle, troops searched between Holgan City and the rural town of Santa Maria to reach those stranded, including elderly people and those with disabilities. The military said the 5-hour operation faced major difficulties due to the fast-moving waters, debris, and darkness. More than 700,000 Cubans have been forced to evacuate nationwide in the widespread flooding caused by the hurricane. And that's it on World Now. For more updates on the stories you're monitoring, you can visit our website on www.tvcnews.tv. You can also follow us on our social media handles, Facebook, Instagram, and on X at TVC News NG. We also have updates for you on WhatsApp and Telegram at TVC News Nigeria. And YouTube, we are live at TVC News Nigeria. Thanks for watching.